Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
Welcome back to Beyond Bound, the ultimate destination for professional development in coaching and athletic administration. In today's episode, we are diving into the crucial item of end of season logistics. As the curtain falls on another successful season, it's important and imperative to ensure a seamless transition into the off season and lay the groundwork for next year. So join us today as we explore the essential checklist items and strategies for wrapping up the season. So everybody, thanks for being with us. And we'll just jump right into this today on this beautiful day. And I'll just show you a couple of the things that I think about as we wrap up the year's end with our coaching staff. And, the first one is we always talk about, I always did an annual review with all of our different teams, all of our clubs and activities, how did it go? And then make sure that we celebrate it. And the way we did that was I put together like a really nice magazine. And that's one thing that I feel like we need to do a better job of as ADs and coaches is just celebrating the success that our teams have. And as we all know, that we have to find a silver lining sometimes. Sometimes we've got those teams that struggle and have only won one game or only won 3 games, but there's always a silver lining, whether it's, kids that have done amazing things, in the classroom, or they've done some community service projects. There's always something to celebrate with our kids and our teams and our coaches. That second step is we've all got these crazy things that we got to get done, all these lists and all these tasks that we need to complete for the end of the year. And then step 3 is like, how do we gather feedback from our coaches and athletes so that we continually get better? And that's imperative to our continuous improvement. And then step 4 is how do we develop those plans for improvement? How do we get better with our coaching staffs? How do we have those tough conversations, those communications with coaches on how we move forward with our teams? I'm just going to share a couple things that have helped me in my role as an athletic director to help our teams, to communicate with our coaches and our student athletes. And the first thing I do, and every time I went to a school and I told coaches we were going to do team program assessments, they all shuddered. And I always said to them, hey, this is for the kids. Let's get their feedback. Let's get their perspective. Now we're talking about the perspective of 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. So it's not always going to be great. And the coach is like, well, there's a kid that doesn't like me. It's going to be bad. I'm like, yep. But we're going to ask them some questions within those assessments that are going to explore them too, not just the coaching staff. So I thought that was important. So I just wanted to share with you what we did with our programs. And I'm just going to share an example of what that looks like for our teams. Whoops. And now I'm having issues with our thing here. So here was the responses that we got from our teams. So I'm just going to show you some of the questions that we asked throughout that. And again, when you see that in our assessment, we had strongly agree. I mean, we got a huge chunk of kids. We had 51 kids response that they had a pretty good, season. That season made me a better student. We continue to ask the questions all the way through. The kids, is, better shape as a result of participating in that sport. My coach did a good job of communicating with me. How can we better communicate with our students and our teams? I was proud to be a team member. Obviously, we had a team here that really felt strongly that they loved their team and they were proud to be a team member. They worked in the off season, and we even kind of expounded on this question. It's like, how many sessions did you go to in off season conditioning? If we had a bunch of kids said I didn't attend, and then they said that they didn't have a good experience, well, then we're talking about we have an investment problem. So why we get our kids invested? So this was just one thing that we did that I felt really kind of gave us a roadmap for our coaches to see what the perception of our kids were and how we could do that. One simple example that we did that I thought really helped is we had a group of kids that said, one of the questions we asked was, is your coaching staff ready for practice? And our kids said no. And my coaches were super upset. And I go, okay, but what are we doing to show them what we're doing to prepare for practice? Do you put the practice plan up? Do you show them all the reports and everything that you're doing for the football team? I'm like, hey, here's the breakdown of on 1st and 10 on the right hash in this formation, they're running this play. Well, no, we don't show them that stuff. I go, I think it's important that we show those kids. And I think now, even more than ever, our kids need to know that why. So that was a prime example of how we use that team assessment, that program assessment to help improve the perception of our program. Next year, our coaches implemented 2 things. They shared all those breakdowns and they shared their practice plans, and that flipped to where 93% of our kids felt like our coaches were prepared for practice. And that was simply presenting that practice plan, putting that up for them, and then showing all the detailed work they're doing on the back end to make sure that they're being successful during games. The next one I want to share with you is just our checklist. This was something that I'd put together over the years. And at the end of the season, I would sit down with our coaching staffs and we would actually go through this list together. And that went from, reviewing our schedule for next year, talking about, hey, when's the team banquet? Hey, get us your information. Who are your letter winners? We need to get a message out to the parents and the kids about the banquet. Where's the varsity winners list? Who's your all conference participants? What's your end of the season record form? I'm actually going to, in the notes here, leave all these documents so that you have access to these. And again, as ADs, I think we're great thieves. We steal good ideas and we make them our own. We change things. We add things to them. We take things away. But this was just a really good form for me at the end of the season when I sat down with coaches and talk about, next year. And we typically did this at our evaluation. But again, we went through these. It was super helpful for us. And then lastly, evaluation is always important. But I would tell you the most important thing about evaluation is that you're going to practices, is that you're going in the locker room at halftime, that as an AD, you're on the sidelines watching the coaches and the interactions. So the evaluation just can't be at the end of the season, you sit down across and you start checking a bunch of boxes off. So I put in here something that I use as an athletic director that was helpful for me. What I went through, and this is absolutely free. You can access on my website, but I have the access to a practice evaluation. I have access to a game evaluation. So when you're on the sideline, I would take my phone. You can access this from your phone. It's mobile friendly. You go on the sideline and you're just looking for things from that coach. Could be as like, hey, you saw an interaction with the coach, with the student athlete. Are they coaching them up or are they screaming at them because they don't know what's going on? Obviously, there's a problem if our kids at game time don't know what they're supposed to do. So those are all questions that we ask in that evaluation. And then I do actually have a postseason evaluation in here also. Just some tools that you can look at. Again, steal the things you like and use it as you would. But it was always good for me to go to practices. I had a great mentor that told me, get your butt out of the office and make sure you go catch your kids and your coaches doing great things. And so I know that's hard as ADs because we always get stuck in our offices, but that was something important. On Bound, you can go to our blog where you find a ton of resources from Todd, Aaron, Mark, Brian, Joey. But we've got an AD checklist in there, and we've got a checklist for each month of things that you could think about for the year. And so that's from, in July, make sure you take some time for yourself. Make sure you're scheduling that. We talk about intentionality. We talk about, having time for ourselves. We need to schedule that and make sure that that's an important part of what we do is making time for family, friends, for ourselves, for reflection. So just each month by month, we have that available for you. And then now I'm going to turn it over to our expert panel. And first question, I'm going to hit Mr. Gordon up here. How do you approach assessing the current season's performance and integrating those insights into planning for next year?
And go.
Ready, set, go.
Well, you stole all my words. So I got to steal them back.
That's all right. I love it.
That's fantastic information. And I sit here and I'm just reminded, I've been out of it for 2 years, and I'm just reminded, and Brian reminded us yesterday when we were talking about some things, that it's May. And I thought, oh my gosh, yeah, it is May. And it just doesn't get any easier. And it's just the thing. I guess I already forgot your question. How do you get us into that? Well, again, it's just, you have to be intentional about it, and you got to schedule it. You have to schedule those times. Doing the evaluations in the spring was the hardest ones to get done, because it's the end of the school year. Teachers are out of there. We're starting baseball, softball in Iowa. And so then you got games, and it just does not stop for the Iowa AD, and they're just turning it around. So you just have to, that's why the evaluation can't be just a checklist at the end of the year like it was 30 years ago when I started coaching. And I'd go in when my principal did the evaluation then, and you just went through the postseason. I never saw him in practice. He was just watching games. And so you just went through that checklist, and that's what it cannot be, just to get it done and to get it off of your list. I think sometimes I cheated those spring coaches out of those conversations because we just rushed through it. I rushed through it. It wasn't their fault. And so if I had to go back and change one thing, I would be much more intentional in the springtime about having those heartfelt discussions with those spring coaches, because I think they got cheated because of the rush. So I would just say you got to be a lot more intentional. That's why I also firmly believe in having those one-on-one sessions that I did, where you're talking to them through their season.
Yeah.
And not just relying on the end of it, but you're just going to have to schedule it, and you're going to have to be very intentional with your time. And yes, I stole your checklists. I stole them all.
I love it. Well, Todd, when I was thinking about this reflection piece, the first thing I thought of was when we did beyond the bench, and you talked about those one-on-one meetings. That's exactly where my brain went as soon as I started preparing for this today. And that reflection piece, we went right back to when you talked about those one-on-one meetings with coaches and how important that was. Mr. Gunderson, how about we put that over to you?
Yeah. I kind of thought, Scott, when you finished this tremendous presentation, that it was going to be a mic drop. You just drop the mic, walk off the stage, and we're done, because I don't know what else can be said that you haven't already said. But Todd Gordon, I loved what you said about cheating I guess I didn't love it because I did the same thing. We cheated the spring and summer coaches. I mean, I swear you were exactly like me in that. I felt terrible all the time. Fall season would end, great time to sit down, reflect, go through all the things. Winter, same thing, because there was a little break. But in the spring, you got 8 sports going, and then overlapping of sports and different state tournaments, and end of the school year, and it's a whirlwind, and pretty soon they walked out the door.
Yeah.
And you missed out on some of those things. So you're right, you have to be intentional. I'll kind of go to a couple things that I thought were important is a self-evaluation sheet that I often gave to the coaches ahead of time. Like, sit back and evaluate yourself. You can sit with your staff and answer these questions. Be honest. And then I'm going to do the same checklist type thing on you. And then we're going to sit down and discuss. We're going to compare. your self-evaluation says, you were really good at this, and mine, yeah, I agree. We're saying there. Well, there might be one where we disagree on the level of competence on a certain thing. I think when they reflect on their own ahead of time, it causes them to think about, what can I do to be better next year? Rather than having, you're going to have a discussion, but often in an evaluation, the AD or the principal is going to come in and tell me what I got to do better. No, let them develop it on their own.
Yeah.
You can add to it, you can improve it, change it a little, but let it be their work. It's their team, it's their athletes. Sure, it fits into the big picture of your school, but I love the self-evaluation portion when dealing with coaches.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. I love that. Mr. Stecker, how about you?
Man, you get deeper into this and it's already been said, but I don't know. There's times I beat myself up over what I did for evaluation, because there's times I'll use their word, I cheated that system a little bit because I wasn't a huge believer in the Likert scale stuff. I was not. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I was not great at the formal evaluation piece. I put a lot more stock and weight into those one-on-one conversations throughout the year. And it might have been a 5-minute conversation the next morning in the hallway when they're on their prep period, after the game the night before, something I saw, or after practice, and it might not even be hey, I saw this at practice. I would try to have some pretty intentional that, hey, the next time I see this coach or talk to this coach, I saw this and I'm going to ask them this question. An example of that might be something along the lines of, hey, some of the feedback, and I would put it with some other things I might be hearing, but hey, some of the feedback I've kind of been hearing is something in the way of, not feeling challenged at practice, or we need to be practicing harder. We need more work. We got to be pushed more. And as just going through practice, I just happened to see a bunch of people standing around on that, so I can understand how they might be feeling that way. What can we do to get better about that? You have those conversations in the moment when you see them, rather than waiting 2 months for the end of the season to have that conversation based on a formal evaluation piece. And so don't shortchange yourself on that. Go address things and talk about things now and get them thinking about things now on that. So some of the reflection stuff, Mark, I love the fact you brought that self-reflection piece up. Some of the questions I liked to throw out there to coaches were things like, hey, what do you think is going really well, or what did you and your staff do best this year? And spend time on that question. I think we asked that question, then we followed up with what's the next question that comes after that is, well, what do we have to get better at? And we jump too dang fast to that what do we got to get better at question, instead of taking time to really listen and understand, what do you think you did best, and how do you make sure you keep replicating that? We always want to follow up on the well, what do we got to get better at part of it, but I'll stop there on the front end. When you're having those conversations and you ask them, what are you best at in your program? How are you most influencing student athletes, or best influencing student athletes through your platform of basketball, soccer, volleyball, show choir, whatever it is? We make sure that gets folded into the growth plan. You said you're doing these things really well. How do we keep doing that and still keep getting better on that? And I think we skip that part and jump to what didn't go well this year, and how do we fix it, and how can I help? It's a great conversation to have, but I think we jump too fast away from it. So I'll share that part of the reflection piece with your coaches, and make sure I'll get back to what you said, Scott. Make sure you celebrate what they did really, really well, and make sure they feel good about the fact that, you know what, you're a freaking strong coach. You're a strong program. You're doing great things for kids. And what you just talked about is evidence of that. We jump too fast to how do we get better? And they're both important. So I'll pass on that with that thought.
Awesome. Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, good stuff. This one's really near and dear to my heart, and just like everything else in my career, was because it was I learned the hard way. And so I seem to do that really well, is learn everything the really hardest way you could. But I think there's a lot to unpack here, Scott. But a couple things I want to point out. This to me is no different than what coaches ask of kids. And I I'm just sitting here thinking about next season with my track team already. We're a young team, not as good as we've been in the past, but we're going to be pretty tough next year. And I'm already thinking about, okay, this hurdler, he's got to do this, this, and this by next season. And one of the big keys is get out for other sports so you can compete on a day-to-day basis and get in the weight room. So I'm already thinking what I'm going to ask my kids to do. That is what an AD's job is with our coaches.
Yep.
And no coach should ever be offended by that, ever. If and I rarely had coaches that turned down suggestions. But as ADs, it is our job to take a hard look at that sport, at that coach, and say, let's get better. Yeah, I was already really good. We went to state. Yep, let's get better. Just like I'm going to ask my kid. That hurdler is going to state in 2 events next week. So, but I'm going to ask him to get better. So why is that not a fair question for our coaches? And I think it's pride becomes an issue here. But I think what Mark Gunderson said, I was going to point out too, self-evaluation. I've got a tool too that I could send anybody so that when you have a conversation with those coaches, they've really been intentional about thinking about those things. I think to me, the big thing here is to help them understand you are just here to help them get better. Just like they are for their kids, you are for them. Somebody has to be there to help push them to grow, to get through that next ceiling or that next barrier. And that to me is the key in the next year. It doesn't matter win, loss, all that stuff. Did you get the most out of your kids? If you didn't, let's get better. Let's get better. So I'll leave it at that. I think this is an awesome topic. Let's just stay on for 4 hours.
Joey, take it home for us here.
I think Brian hit the exact point. I was gonna say, I'm thinking, all right, I'm gonna get to mine. Nobody's gonna take this one. Then Brian snatches it right out of thin air. It's the exact same thing we expect from our kids as a coach. We are coaching the coaches. That's our job, right? Who coaches the coaches? That's us. And the management sometimes gets in the way of that. You've got your checklist. Checklists are great. You got to have them. Those things have to be done. But evaluation is an ongoing process. It's not an event, a single event. It's a process, and it is May. But the bright side of that is, you know what? You got a lot of outdoor sports going on right now. Yeah. And I'd walk out to track, or I'd walk out to tennis practice, and I would, you talk to the kids when they're doing their drills. They're running sprints, but now they're catching their breath. So you go talk to them, and that I get to do that. You look around, and this is my job. This is what I do for a living. I get paid to come out here and talk to kids and talk to coaches, and it's 72 degrees and no wind, and which that happens once a year, but but you get to do those things, and you talk about things in the moment, and that's how you improve as an athlete, but that's how you improve as a coach as well. You don't let those things go. Why would you? If you see something that a coach can improve on, why would you wait till the end of season evaluation to address it? Yeah. Just like you do with your kids. And I think I said this last week, or maybe we talked about it the week before, but kids need to know why. They need to know, why am I doing this? Well, coaches do too, because our coaches, guys, we're not getting any younger, but our coaches seem to be. So they're coming from that generation that needs to know the why. So now our coaches need to know the why. Okay, here's how this is going to help your kids. Here's how this is going to help your programs. Not just a checklist and a singular feedback. So coach them up.
I love it. So just quickly, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what are some key things, and maybe this could even almost be, what are some things that you always forgot to do at the end of the year? And I know for me, I would forget to do so many different things. Brian, go ahead.
No, hey, sorry. I just, as soon as you said that, I remember your checklist. The first thing you had on there, let's review next season's schedule. it never failed that I waited until the beginning of the next season because I was responsible for scheduling, but I didn't really want to talk to my coaches about it because I had already had it kind of done, or I would forget. And my coach would be like, why are we going to this tournament again? I want to go to this tournament. Well, it's too late for that. We signed a contract. So I saw your checklist and I thought, oh my gosh, that should have been the very first thing we talked about. Hey, what did you, because you're thinking about it right now. I'm thinking about my track calendar right now. Let's talk about next season right now instead of waiting until 2 months before the season, then doing it. So that's the one I definitely, and that's just a checklist item, right? But always forgot it. I always did.
Yep. Mr. Gordon, how about you? Anything that you always at the end of the year, like, oh crap, I forgot to do this?
I never had enough rum. No.
You can always have more of that.
Well, I mean, planning is the key to success.
Right.
I think the one thing I always forgot, and it's a little thing, but pick up your area. Pick up if you have a cubby, if you have a closet, we had different areas where people had stuff stored. Get your crap put away. Get it organized. Don't leave it there till the next season to say, well, I'll put those uniforms. Get your uniforms put away. Take care of them so we don't have to buy new ones because you did not have them washed. I mean, I always forgot that. And they walk out the door and they be gone. And I didn't tell them to organize their pigsty that they have down there in the closet. So I have forgotten that all the time. And then I always get more rum to make sure I
add more rum. Mr. Gunderson, how about you?
Well, gosh, I don't know. I'm sure there were things I forgot each year, various things, but I agree with the checklist of tasks, kind of administrative tasks. I think you have to go over that with them. You can't just say, hey, remember to do all those end of the season things. You kind of have to say, okay, remember all of your equipment is stored here and get that done the next 2 weeks. And make sure you turn in your list of letter winners to the secretary so they can do certificates. And that's got to be done by this date. You almost have to give them a timeline on some of those because I think the times I forgot to give them a timeline, well, then it's on their timeline, which is, well, I'll get it done. Like you said, Todd, then next season starts and stuff's still laying around. I do have one interesting story. I don't know that I ever went in and counted uniforms. Coaches would collect them and make sure they're clean and store them and so forth. And there was this mother called me one day. This is probably 15 years ago already. And she says, hey, could I stop by today? My daughter's off at college and I was kind of cleaning out her room. And I have her varsity uniform from all 4 sports she played in. I don't think she's supposed to have those. No, she's not. So the mother brought him in. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. Aaron, how about you?
Oh, Mark, and it was always a really fun conversation was then when you went to that coach and said, hey, parent just dropped off like the uniforms from the past 3 seasons from your sport. Where do you want me to put these? Because the coach is like, here's the thing. I was not as good at implementing the checklist that I stole from you, Mr. Jarvis. So there's a lot of things I would just forget, but I try not to get too lost in it. This is going to sound like a sappy answer, but it's a dead honest answer. And it's honestly one of the things I guess I look back on and say, man, Aaron, mid-June, end of June, end of July, getting kind of thing. When I started rolling my head over the next year and starting to put last year to bed. More years than not, honestly, I was frustrated with myself that I think too many of my coaches checked out for the year. Didn't know I loved them, didn't know I cared enough. I got so caught up on the other stuff that I don't think I meant to. I intentionally told them before they went away for the summer, I care about you. I appreciate what you do. Thanks for all you did for our kids, and I love you. I didn't do that enough. on that. And I wonder sometimes if some coaches who maybe had a rough year and we kind of had some contentious conversations went into the summertime, not wondering if I wanted them back or not. And that's too bad on my part. It is. So take the time to make it. You might have had a frustrating season with them, and it might be a little rough, trying to get them going the right direction and stuff. But dang it, they shouldn't leave without knowing you love them. And I don't know that I was as good as that as I should have been.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, too many times we can get stuck up in the checklists instead of celebrating and tell people we care about and love them. Coaches, we do the same thing. We need to tell our kids we love them. ADs, we need to tell our coaches we love them and appreciate the things that they do. So Mr. Struey, wrap this baby up for us.
I don't know if there's one thing that I forgot, but I always forgot something.
Yes.
Always a different thing, because the next year I'm saying, all right, I got to remember to do this. And then I'd forget to do that. But everybody's in a hurry. In South Dakota, we have our school is out next Friday for some people. And our state track meet is the week after. And state golf is the week after that. And so there's a lot of things going on in the classroom. They're trying to do finals, and they're trying to collect uniforms for kids before they disappear for the summer because they didn't qualify for the state meet, those types of things. And we just need to make sure that we're intentional about what we're doing. And as Aaron said, don't forget to let them know as they're going out the door or as their season is ending that we appreciate what they do. We appreciate the work and the sacrifice and the effort that it takes to be leaders in the school and become leaders in the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I as I was thinking about this, I was actually thinking about our last Beyond the Bench podcast, and I just kind of came with this in the game of athletics. The end of one season is merely the beginning of the next chapter. It's not just about how we finished, but it's about how we prepare for what lies ahead. So we hope that you gain some valuable insights into the art of mastering the end of the season logistics and are feeling empowered to elevate your coaches, your administrative prowess. But in the end, join us next time for more valuable tips and strategies to push the boundaries of excellence and the world of education based on athletics. Until then, keep striving for greatness and keep pushing beyond bound.